think it's possible to become a billionaire when you're only 18 years old? Howard Hughes proved that it was. True, the price for doing so was enormous. His story begins with tragedy, an incredible inheritance, and the first big gamble that turned his life around. When Hughes was only 16 years old, his parents began to think about what his future would be like. His father, Howard Hughes Sr., was a successful inventor and entrepreneur. He created the drilling tool that revolutionized oil production, but Hughes Sr. did not see his son as a businessman at all. His parents sent young Howard to study at the prestigious California Institute of Technology, but fate ordered otherwise. His mother, Allen, died in March 1922 from complications of ectopic pregnancy. Howard Hughes Sr. died of a heart attack in 1924, when Howard was only 18 years old. The young man suddenly became the sole heir to a huge fortune, the family business, Hughes Tool Company, and the capital of millions of dollars. It would seem that such an inheritance, this is good luck. But for a teenager who has not yet had time to grow up, it became a serious challenge. Instead of continuing his studies as his parents wanted, he made a shocking decision. He dropped out of university, sold a share of the company to his father's partners, and became its full owner. At the time, many people thought he was crazy. No one believed that such a young man could lead a business, but Hughes proved otherwise. His first steps in business turned out to be daring. He invested in the development of new technologies for the oil industry. The most high-profile project was the improvement of drilling tools. His company created unique models that allowed to extract oil faster and cheaper. This brought him his first millions. It would seem that everything should have gone smoothly for such a young billionaire. But already at this stage, traits that would later lead him to isolation and tragedy became apparent in his character. Next, you will learn how Howard Hughes went from engineer and entrepreneur to one of Hollywood's most eccentric tycoons. How to turn money into dreams and dreams into millions. Howard Hughes found the answer in Hollywood. As a young billionaire, he decided that movies were not just entertainment, but a way to make a mark on history. But, as with everything he undertook, Hughes approached the business in his own way, expensive, audacious, and ambitious. In 1926, with almost limitless capital, Howard began producing movies. But he was not enough just to finance projects. He wanted to create something great. His breakthrough was the movie Hell's Angels, which tells about the heroes of the First World War. The filming took 3 years and an incredible, for that time, $4 million. This made the picture the most expensive movie in history at that time. What was the reason for such costs? Hughes's perfectionism. He demanded that everything looked perfect, real combat aircraft, complex aerial stunts, which no one had done before, and even reshooting key scenes because of the change of the main actress. Hughes piloted the airplane himself to shoot the most difficult shots of the battles, and once even almost crashed. He insisted that the aerial battle scenes look so realistic that many actors refused to participate, fearing for their lives. The movie ended up being a hit, grossing over $8 million at the box office. This success showed that Hughes' risks are justified, even if others consider his methods strange. In Hollywood, he became famous not only for his movies, but also for his relationships. Howard dated several actresses at the same time, including legends such as Katharine Hepburn and Ava Gardner. He charmed women with his charisma, but behaved quite unconventionally. For example, instead of flowers and romantic dinners, could offer to discuss technical drawings of airplanes. However, his relationship rarely lasted long. Many actresses left him, notwithstanding his unpredictable behavior. Despite his success in the movies, his methods of managing the company began to lead to conflicts. Some partners accused him of waste and intemperance, but Hughes was just beginning to experiment with money. Next, you will learn how he decided to make the sky his main screen. Hughes had been attracted to aviation since childhood. He didn't just want to fly, he wanted to build airplanes that would be faster, taller, and more powerful than any that existed. To that end, he invested millions of dollars to found the Hughes Aircraft Company. But it wasn't enough for him to just fund development. He was involved in the design himself. One of his first successes was the design of the H-1 Racer airplane. This high-speed machine broke the world speed record, accelerating to 566 kilometers per hour. To test it, Hughes personally sat at the wheel. He was eager to prove that his ideas worked, and he did so despite the huge risks involved. Hughes didn't just design airplanes, he tested them himself. It almost cost him his life once. In 1946, while testing a new military plane, he lost control and crashed in a residential neighborhood in Beverly Hills. Miraculously surviving, Hughes suffered multiple fractures and burns, but even that didn't stop him. A few months later, he returned to work because, as he said, the future of aviation is worth any risk. Hughes' most ambitious project was the Spruce Goose, a giant wooden seaplane designed for cargo transportation during World War II. Its size is amazing. Wingspan, 97 meters. Height, almost with a 7-story building. It was a real record for aviation. However, the war ended, and the project became unnecessary. Despite this, Hughes insisted on completing the construction. In 1947, the plane took to the air, but only once, flying only a few kilometers. Many criticized him for wasting millions, but Hughes called the Spruce Goose proof that the impossible was possible. After the crash and criticism for Spruce Goose, many began to question his adequacy. Hughes himself became increasingly withdrawn. But it was during this period that he began working on secret projects that changed the technology of the future. Next, you will learn how his fears and genius led to his self-isolation. What could make a billionaire and genius with endless possibilities give up on life? For Howard Hughes, it was fears that grew with each passing year. It all started after a plane crash in 1946. The pain he experienced and the fear of death seemed to open the door in his mind to a host of new phobias. He began to fear germs, diseases, and even people. Hughes once declared that he would not touch anything unless it was treated with alcohol. His loved ones recounted that he washed his hands dozens of times a day until his skin began to crack. Each year, the fears grew worse. By the 1950s, Hughes hardly ever left his room, but his rooms weren't ordinary. For example, he bought entire floors of luxury hotels to isolate himself from people. He surrounded himself with assistants who ran all his errands, but even with them he did not communicate personally. Instead, he wrote notes, sometimes outlining his thoughts on dozens of pages. Despite his isolation, Hughes continued to run his companies. He gave orders through memos, controlling millions of dollars. But his behavior became increasingly erratic. For example, he could abruptly end a negotiation if he thought the person he was talking to coughed too close to him. Toward the end of his life, his behavior became so bizarre that many people began to question his sanity. Howard Hughes was surrounded by wealth, but died virtually alone. What does a man who lived in luxury but died in isolation leave behind? Howard Hughes' story is full of paradoxes, and his death only added to the mysteries. Even after his passing, he was able to leave behind a legacy that still raises questions and controversy. Howard Hughes died in 1976 at the age of 70. But even the moment of his death was shocking. His weight was only 41 kilograms, and he looked like a ghost of himself. Many even doubted that this was the same wealthy man who once ran a business empire. The strangest part began after his death. In his papers found several wills, and in each of them the heirs were different. One will was suddenly discovered by a cab driver who claimed that Hughes had left him millions. The legal proceedings lasted 34 years, and to this day no one knows exactly which of the wills was real. Despite his oddities, Hughes left the world not only mysteries, but accomplishments as well. His engineering designs in aviation and technology are still in use today. Hughes Aircraft became one of the leading companies in the development of communication systems and military equipment. His ideas helped create the first satellite systems used by millions of people. After his death, Hughes was left with a fortune of about $2.5 billion. This money created a real war between relatives, companies, and even people who had never met Hughes. Who was supposed to get it remained unclear. His name is still surrounded by mystery. Howard Hughes left behind not only a legacy, but also questions that may never find answers.